This right here is a stack of 2 stacks. This week, let me tell you about the stacked whiskey and beer collaboration between 2 Stacks Irish Whiskey and DOT Brew. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Matt, I'm the Whiskey Nerd, and like I said, this week I'm looking at the stacked collaboration between 2 Stacks Irish Whiskey and the DOT Brew. So let me get these out of their cans, into the glasses, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them. Now this here is a collaboration, like I said, between DOT Brew here in Ireland and 2 Stacks here also in Ireland. And this is a little kind of a can collaboration. So what they did was for Christmas they released this here, and they stacked these two up here in this kind of like tube as like a stocking stuffer, as like a gift you can give to someone. Just kind of a nice little idea of a whiskey and beer pairing, because if I can get this closed, the kind of whiskey and beer pairing is a classic. You know, you have the things like the Boilermaker, you have the flavor of the whiskey and the beer working together. And so what they did was they took a 2 Stacks Irish whiskey, I'll get to the whiskey in a second, they finished that in a DOT Brew Imperial Stout cask, and then for the beer they took a DOT Brew Imperial Stout and they finished it in a whiskey cask that 2 Stacks had used to kind of get the whiskey and the flavor across both, and hopefully have kind of similar notes, or at least recognizable notes, between the two kind of cans. For the whiskey, this is essentially 2 Stacks' double barrel single malt, so it's 40% double distilled malt that was aged in bourbon barrels. It was 50% triple distilled malt that was aged in sherry casks, and 10% peated malt that was aged in bourbon casks. So you've got 2 types of casks there, but this is now like a triple cask because I had that kind of the 3rd cask of the DOT Brew Imperial Stout cask. Now if you want to see a review of the kind of the core whiskey and you want to find out more about that, I'll put a link up there, I'll put a link down below, because I have reviewed that kind of core double barrel whiskey, but today we're talking about this collaboration. This here is an Imperial Stout, which is a stout beer. As you can see, it's like an Irish beer that's not like a Guinness where you get that head. It's kind of heavy, it's kind of thicker, it's richer. I think this comes in, at 7.5% alcohol by volume. The whiskey comes in at 43%, if I recall correctly, 43%. This is quite a boozy little pairing, so I will be enjoying them kind of slowly together. The Imperial Stout, it's going to give you these kind of rich, chocolatey coffee notes. And for me, it's really, really nice. I sometimes use a stout as like a base for like a sugar syrup for making an Irish coffee. Like I'll reduce down that stout, add a bit of sugar, and make that sugary syrup. Use it in Irish coffee, really great, because it has that rich, chocolatey coffee notes. And a stout beer, this Imperial Stout cask beer is going to be really, really tasty. So like I said, today is more about the collaboration, looking at the 2 things together. So I'm going to try both them against each other. So let's go in for the nose. Yeah, this is definitely a single malt. You get that little bit of peat smoke from the 10% of peat smoke. I'm getting a little bit of the malty, biscuity notes, getting that kind of bourbon cask, but really, really rich notes of chocolate, of coffee, of those heavy duty notes you get there from that stout cask. I'm not sure how long it was in the stout cask for, but it was a nice bit of a finish because I'm getting that stout note coming through. It hasn't turned the whiskey black, but just giving it a nice bit of like a contrasting flavor note into the whiskey. Let's go in for the nose on the beer. Okay, immediately, oh, that's fruity, that's very sweet. Like, it's a little bit sweeter than I thought. Like up front, I get the stout, I get that earthy, malty, toasted, cooked grains. Like you get that kind of the dark notes from the grains coming through, but it's also very fruity. It's very almost apples and pears. Like, oh yeah, I wouldn't say citrusy, I'd say like apples and pears, those kind of flavors coming through on the nose, as well as obviously that toasted grains, the toasted kind of roasted malted barley. You get the like the chocolate and coffee, those earthy dark notes. It doesn't actually taste, you know, like coffee or chocolate, but it reminds you of those flavors, those dark, earthy, kind of roasted flavors. So now I think I'm gonna go in for the palate. I have got a little bit of water, so I'll be kind of cleansing my palate between the tastings, but I'm gonna start off with the whiskey itself. Just give it a taste, see how it is. Cheers. Okay. On the nose, I go saying, I got malty, I got that bit of peat smoke, and then I got the kind of beer finish. On the palate though, other way around. You get that beer influence up front. You get the coffee, the chocolate, almost like juicy, like dark winter berries, almost like a little bit of blackcurrant, like a little bit of like blackberry. Those kind of flavors actually as well, a little bit juicy. Like maybe that's the Sherry Cask influence where you get those berry notes, but with that stout influence, it turns a bit darker, a bit deeper, a bit more earthy kind of flavor coming through, because I'm definitely getting, bit of like, dark fruits, bit of vanilla, flavors like that coming through. So I'm gonna have a little bit of water, and then I'm gonna go in for the DOT Brew Imperial Stout cask, Imperial Stout that was finished in a whiskey cask. Cheers. That's surprisingly clean. So like on the nose, and the feel of it is this like heavy beer, like with a lot of flavor, but then on the palate, it's quite clean. It's like, you get those flavors. It's not, what I'm saying is it's not like honeyed, it's not like sticky, it's not like I'm getting those like flavors that just sit into my palate. I got a nice bit of the stout. I got the roasted toasted grains, those kind of flavors. And it didn't get a huge amount of like the whiskey bar. Like it's definitely sweet. It's definitely sweeter than like a normal kind of Imperial Stout, but I didn't get a huge amount of the whiskey. So I'm gonna go in again, and then I'm gonna taste these kind of back to back again, so you're gonna see how the flavors work. Okay, definitely trying them with each other when you've still got the flavor of them both in their mouth. Really, that's the way to do it. This here, second sip around, I actually did get a little like the whiskey tang. It was like a little bit of a little note at the end after my second sip. As soon as I swallowed it, I went, okay, there it is. There's like a little bit of like a kick of the whiskey barrel, like a little bit of oak, a little bit of extra sweetness, and a little bit of like, I don't want to say spice, but that kind of like earthy spice. First sip round was just getting that stout. Second sip round, I was able to get a little bit more of that kind of the stout beer influence. Now I'm going to taste them going the other way. Cheers. That way, way more of the way more of like the beer influence on that stout. Oh, sorry, the whiskey influence on the stout. Obviously had the whiskey and then the stout, and then it goes back to stout. I think the best way of having this is stout and then beer. Sorry, stout and then whiskey, because you get that hit of the stout, you get that kind of almost dry, rich, not bitter, but like heading to that earthy, bitter note. And then you get the sweetness of the whiskey with those kind of berry fruits, kind of lightening things up a little bit as you go. Before I go in for my final sip and have my final thoughts on this little collaboration, if you're new here, scroll down, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button. I put out whiskey reviews on Wednesdays, and I put out cocktail recipes featuring whiskey every Friday, and I'm gonna have a cocktail recipe featuring both of these this Friday. So if you wanna see that, make sure you scroll down, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, and while you're there, leave me a comment and say if there's anything like any whiskeys or beers even, or cocktails you want to see me make or review in future, because I always love hearing from you. But now I'm gonna go in for my final little sips. Yeah, definitely the beer and then the whiskey is kind of the way I would do this. Interestingly, the more I taste this, maybe it's with the whiskey influence coming through, the sweeter it's getting. Like initially up front, my first sip of it, I was like bitter and dark, but now it's getting more milk chocolatey. It's getting a little bit like lighter, a little bit sweeter, a little bit more of that kind of like the vanilla note coming through. I think this is fun. I think it wouldn't be, because the beer I think it doesn't last forever. It has obviously an expiration date at the end of 2025, because like I said, this was something they released for Christmas as like that kind of stocking stuffer idea of, you don't know what to get someone, you can get them this. Bit of fun, bit of an experience. I'm glad it wasn't like a full-size bottle of the whiskey and like a 6-pack of the cans, because I think that would be too much. I think this is a nice fun little experiment, and because they're both in cans, you kind of have to enjoy them both together. You kind of have to enjoy them both side by side, rather than having the whiskey, a beer, and then the beer goes away and you've still got half a bottle of whiskey, because it's definitely a fun little collaboration. This flavor of the whiskey, actually very nice. Maybe because they have got some stout casks in their normal releases, maybe they should consider doing this, because this is actually very, very nice. But together I think they're really, really good. I think they're even better together. So I think I'm definitely going to enjoy them. I'm definitely going to keep on enjoying these. And I'll see you next time. Sláinte.